looking forward to tonight. This is episode 9, but it's our first one of the year. This is the Real, Raw and Relevant show with your host. I'm Locky. It's cool to have you with us. If this is the first time checking us out, welcome along. If it's you're coming back from last year, I'm so glad you've come back. You've been very patient, waiting for us to come back in 2022. More on that real soon. And look at that, we've got my friends from Auckland, Chris and Karen, saying hello to me, and they're obviously saying hello to the rest of you. Hey, wherever you are, I really hope the old COVID isn't smacking you around too much. I know Chris and Karen have had it through their entire household. We haven't had it yet, but I've had a few rat tests, so I know all about that. So I know we're all doing rats at the moment, aren't we? So there we go. Hey, last year we managed to bring you on pretty much every show a great interview, and we had some pretty special conversations around a reoccurring theme of mental health, and I really enjoyed bringing that to you. And when we launched the show, one of the things that I figured would be best to do is to kind of do shows on things that I'm passionate about, things that I believe in. I didn't want to fake anything with you because, again, it's the Real, Raw and Relevant show. And so we focused on mental health because that was a big deal for me. It still is. I'm not saying it's not. But over the summer, I've been thinking a lot about what direction we should go in with the show. Do we carry on with mental health? And the answer is yes, but it's not going to be every show. There are a whole lot of other topics that I really want to talk about that are very relevant for probably all of us, and I'm looking forward to expanding on that real soon. So the title of this show, you may have seen it advertised, is tonight we're going to talk about the future of the church, which is a big deal. And I've been a little bit apprehensive about doing this. I've been doing a lot of research on this for a different project that I've been working on. But no matter what topic we deal with, my promise to you is always what's in the title. We're always going to be real, we're always going to be raw, and we're always going to be relevant. I want to be honest with you about what's going on in my life, how I relate to it. So please just grab whatever you can out of these and let's see where we go. We're going to have some more interviews this year. I'm teeing up some right now. But we're going to use them where they fit best. I'm not just going to have an interview every single show. So some nights are going to look a little bit different, like tonight, and we're going to get a little bit more broad and a bit more creative because, hey, that's what I like doing anyway. And my name's in the show title, so I suppose I can do whatever I want. There you go. Anyway, so we're going to use some interviews, we're going to use some video, going to get a little bit more creative in 2022. And I'm hoping a little experiment we're working on behind the scenes, we're going to add a whole lot of extra interactivity to this. So right now, you can make comments, say hello in the Facebook Live that we're doing right now. So please say hello, click those likes and all that sort of stuff, and say in the comments where you're from. We like doing it at the beginning of the show. Again, it's always my Auckland friends are on first. At least said that first. Anyway, got rolling my R's. Like I said, tonight we're going to talk about the future of the church. So if that's something that you think's of interest to you or maybe someone else, hey, give them a quick message on your phone, say, hey, come and check this out. It's going to be really good. So after the bumper, we're going to dive pretty much full into it. Got some ideas I want to share with you and some comments and some graphs and all sorts of exciting things. But before that, if you like what we're doing, as per usual, like, share, comment, hit the heart button, the thumbs up button. We've got some, is it laughing with tears? It's really small on my little screen over there. I hope it's laughing with tears, not crying because it's so bad, but it's all good. As I said, say hello in the comments if you can. And if you're wondering how you can support the show, it's nice and easy. By being here, you're supporting the show. But if you really want to take it another step further, the Buy Me a Coffee setup is happening again. Well, it hasn't stopped. It's still carrying on through into the new year now. And we'll post a link to that after the show where you can buy me a virtual coffee. That's how it works. I think that's enough of all the kind of official things to get out of the way. So let's roll that little stinger and then we'll be on with the rest of the show. Now, there's a couple of things I want to mention before I dive into this. I've got lots of notes, but it's pretty unscripted. I have not worked out exactly how I want to say everything. I've been looking at this topic since August of 2020, but with a whole lot more depth since the end of last year when the opportunity came up to be involved with a research project dealing with, specifically, I'm writing an article for a publication right now that's going to be coming out in June, and we have to get all our bits and pieces ready to go. I want to get your feedback. Good, bad, especially during live. If there's something that I mention that strikes a chord with you that you like or don't like, please fire it in the comments. If you want to take it a whole step further, again, we'll post a link to this later. That's what we always say. But if you want to email me, locky@templeproductions.nz, I'd love your feedback as well. And here's the why. Honestly, I've wrestled a lot with this, even leading up to tonight, this morning. I'm thinking, am I really that qualified to even talk about? I'm not meaning that as in I'm a worm and I'm not qualified. For me, this is such a big deal, such a big topic. I do not want to portray the church or anything in a way that's not going to be helpful. I'm still convinced that the church has done more good than it's ever done bad. I know there's been lots of stories and things have happened in people's lives that have not been fantastic. Unfortunately, when you stick a bunch of people in a room together, part of an organization together, sometimes things go wrong, and we want so much better for people a part of the church. But I actually still believe in the church, and I want it to continue to have a positive impact in the world. And look, I know it will. And even if I didn't do the show, I know it's going to go on and do different things. But I wanted to talk about it because it's something that I've been honestly mulling over, like I've mentioned, for so long. And please forgive me if I say a few things multiple times over. I'm just really passionate about this topic, and I really want to get out, I suppose, what's been bubbling away in my heart for so long. If you're wanting to know what is the church, if you're looking for kind of a really simple definition, I'm not going to give you a dictionary definition. This is just the way that I see it. Here's my simple definition for what the church is. The church is what is commonly referred to as God's people as a group. Like if you put them all together, all of God's people, we'd call that the church in its entirety. In the time that we live in, we call that the church. It's the people. So it's the people that make all that organism up, which we call the church. And then where it gets confusing, I think, for a lot of people in the church and outside of the church and part of the culture that it is in many times it seems to refer to a building or a place where God's people meet. And yeah, we call that the church, but it's still going back to referring to the people. That's what it always comes back to. Other times it's used as a label for a meeting or a moment, but it's always referring to the people in that meeting or that moment. And I believe the church, it's God's idea. We didn't come up with this thing. I know that religions have been around since the dawn of time, but my definition of what I'm talking about tonight, I'm talking about something that I believe that God's put in place, that God designed, that we are in our humanness desperately trying to wrestle with and be on the same page, I guess, as God with. Now, one of the things that he's referred to the church many times in Scripture in the Bible, he calls the church his bride. I just want to mention that for a moment because for me, it's super important. If God sees the church as a bride and the imagery of him being a bridegroom, then that paints a picture for us about just how much the church means to him. If you're getting married, you know how this works. If you've got married, you know the excitement of when you're standing at the front of the church or wherever you're going to get married. See, the church gets used as the name of a building again. See, that's where it gets confusing. That moment, that anticipation of what your bride is going to look like when she comes walking down the aisle. I know for me, I was pretty super excited about it. And I was so excited, and we're preparing for a special day. I even sung my my bride who's coming down the aisle, which is Suze. I actually sung a song for her, Bryan Adams, Everything I Do For You. All the girls out there are going, oh, and all the guys are going, jerk, that you're so romantic. But hey, some of us have those skills, and sorry, I might be able to pass that on, but it's all cool. But see, if God sees the church as his bride, I think sometimes we have to be a little bit careful about how we talk about something that's so important to God. That's just the way I look at it. You as a bridegroom would not take kindly to someone criticizing your future wife, your future bride. Like if people are all sitting around going, oh, this about her and she's not good and she's not that and she's not as good as she needs to be, I think you would be a little bit, maybe even just a little bit uncomfortable. I'm always a little bit cautious about what we should and how we should come across with this, just because of that relationship. And that doesn't mean we can't observe, we can't critique, we can't discuss. For me, the concept is a sobering limit potentially on how far you and I should go. That's the way that I see it. So it actually scares me sometimes, to be blunt, when I see the way and hear the way that some people talk about the church like it's the worst thing that's ever happened. I think we just have to be a little bit cautious. And for those of you, please forgive me, I'll throw a few other Bible things in here for some of you not used to this kind of talk from me on this show. All throughout the Bible, all throughout Scripture, God ain't a huge fan when people grumble and moan about something that he's designed. It's all okay to deal with the issues that go with inside what God's designed, but it's not okay to grumble and moan. And so that's why I think it's really important we have sort of those sobering factors built into it. Here's another thing to think about before I dive into some points for you. The church has been going for a couple of thousand years. And there's kind of no reason to expect that it won't continue to go. Something that's had that longevity through all the challenges that it's faced, because there have been other challenges beyond COVID-19 that the church and the world has faced. There have been other plagues, there's been wars, there's been the dark ages, there's all sorts of ages that you can look about through history where the church has faced massive upheaval, massive challenge, massive change, and yet the church has managed to carry on. The baton has been able to get passed from generation to generation, and I think it's going to carry on full steam ahead. And so this is why this leads me onto this discussion. Before I carry on, got some, oh, look at there, we've got Ash. Look at that. See, it's everyone from outside of where I live. There's Ash. Hi, buddy, from Invercargill. All that Invercargill people. Hi, how are you guys? It's cool to have you here, buddy. So this leads to discussion. What's the future of the church? What should it look like now and into the known future? And maybe what the church looks like or is like right now, as we know it, maybe that's the best it could be. Maybe you're sitting there going, Locky, I don't even know why we're having this conversation because it's doing great. I really like it. I don't think there's a major problem. Or maybe there is something happening in our time. Maybe there is a time for change. Maybe it's okay to sit there and go, are we actually being as effective as the church? And I include myself in this because I've been part of it for most of my life. Are we doing the best that we possibly can? Is it working the best we possibly can? Now, I'm going to dive into some other things, but please, if I make a comment that you like or don't like, please just fire it in the comments and we'll have a bit of a discussion. It's all cool. I'd love to get your feedback. Now, as I mentioned, where did this all begin? Began, as for most of the things that have happened in our world in the last little while, at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic and the change it brought to most areas of our lives. And it's been that's a watershed moment. It's been a defining moment for many of us. For me, while I was a little scared along with you all, part of me was really curious to see where this was going to take us, where it was going to take the church, because I was very much at that time involved in what you'd call the church. And at the time in 2020 of March, I was in fact pastoring a church here in Taupo, New Zealand. And we, like everyone else, in the hours leading up to that first lockdown, I can still remember it quite distinctly, we're scrambling to prepare for a new normal. That's a phrase that started getting thrown around, and it was being thrust on us whether we wanted it or not. I was running around. We had this idea that we're going to go to this church online. We'd done some experiments with it in the past, but not fully committed to it. I was looking for lights. I was borrowing cameras. I was picking up things from all around that town, all around Taupo here on the Wednesday of that lockdown when you were going into lockdown that night. We had to be ready because we didn't think we'd be able to be out again for a period of time. And something I heard around the church in the following lockdown weeks was these phrases. Number one, God was doing a new thing. You've probably heard that a few times, but that God's doing a new thing. And I think God is always doing a new thing. But like I mentioned, there was this other phrase getting thrown around, new normal. And churches like us set up dedicated online services. We had prayer meetings, we had meetings about meetings. If anything could be done online, that's what we did. And we loved it. It was all exciting. We organised get-togethers from couches from each other's homes, and we talked about how we're going. As a family, we organised Zoom dinner meetings. I think it was on a Sunday night. We'd set up an iPad or whatever on the kitchen table, and my family in Wanaka and Invercargill would all catch up, and we'd do life online. But when we came into the first lockdown, this is what I heard. We can go back to normal now, which struck me Because all through the first lockdown, everyone was saying, without a doubt, God's doing a new thing, here's the new normal. And at the back of my mind, I was wondering where the God doing a new thing and the new model had gone, because I saw a lot of people want to get back to normal again as fast as they possibly could, because it's the way that we had seen the world change. It's what we thought, many of us thought. But I was sitting there going, you know what? Something's going on here. Has something fundamentally changed? Is this the time for change? And before taking a break from full-time ministry, for all sorts of reasons, especially my health, this new normal concept had done something to me profoundly. I began to ask a lot of questions. I wanted to talk to other leaders about it because I didn't trust exactly everything that I was thinking and feeling in that moment. But I wanted to make some changes, and I wanted to figure out if the future of the church might not look like the way it had been in the past, but maybe God was wanting to do something different from our previous pre-COVID-19 world. So what do you think? If I could ask you, just for a moment, what you think of the future of the church, and I'm keen for you to fire it in the comments there, and we'll stick it up on the screen if you're comfortable with that. I'm sure most of you have thought about it, at least a sense of what you think it could or should look like. Let me know in the comments. But I recognize, and this has been part of my research, that we're all so super biased. We're all on some level tainted by our circumstances and our experiences. And when I put out for people to send me what their thoughts were, I've had some great feedback via Messenger and via emails from actually people from around the world talking about what I'd put on my social media channel, saying, what do you think about the future of the church? And over the years, I've had elders meetings, leaders meetings, and we've talked about what the church should look like ad nauseum based on the time that we understood back then. And I've just put a little list together of things that have come out of this. So things have been sent to me recently, and comments that I've had on a reoccurring theme over the years about what the church should look like. First one is this, and then in no particular order, and maybe you've got a few you want to chuck in there, or you might want to go you like or don't like some of these. The first one that came back to me a lot was get back to normal. I know I've mentioned that, but that's been a reoccurring thing. People have said to me, the future of the church is to get back to normal. Just get back to normal, whatever it takes. Get back to doing what we were doing, what everyone else was doing before. Another bit of feedback we've had is increased modernisation. So technology and modern culture, and you would have seen this, churches with larger budgets have definitely headed down this path where you see LED screens and you see more and more lights, and you see the culture of what's going on in church reflects a more modern way of doing things. And I'm not saying it's good, bad or indifferent, but that's what I've had a feedback saying that's the future of the church. Here's another one. Get better at feeding people. I've heard this for 20 plus years. The future of the church is get better at feeding people. It's a loaded phrase we don't have time to get into. Another one is improve the quality of your programming. If you could just improve the quality of programming inside church, and if you're not familiar with what I'm meaning there, it's essentially meaning things like your youth, children's ministries, all these things we call ministries within inside church, which are designed to meet need within inside the group that we have. Women's ministry, men's ministry, you have to put ministry after it for it to become a legit title, it seems. All that stuff has been seen as the future of the church. If we just do more of that or get better at it, then everything's going to be great. That's the future of the church. Here's one that got thrown at me, I don't know how many times, and it is a phrase I could talk about a lot. Church should be more like a hospital. If we had more time, and I might actually do a little separate thing on this later, but church should be more like a hospital. If people used to say at leaders' meetings, if you could just be more like a hospital, the future of the church would be set. Someone who has been cancelled from, I suppose, modern conversation now, but it was a phrase that used to be used as an ex-pastor by the name of Bill Hybels. Please don't stone me if you have a problem with me mentioning it. I'm just saying a phrase that we used to all say together, the church or the local church is the hope of the world. It was a phrase that came out of, I don't know, maybe the early 2000s and went all the way through. If we ever went to a church growth conference, someone would trot this out. The future of the church is the local church. But he's been cancelled, so we don't talk like that now. Be more seeker-friendly versus being more teaching-based. That if we could just do that, that's the future of the church. Here's another one. And this is based on some feedback, and I'm quoting someone who kindly sent me their feedback. It says this, maybe the answer is to look back at the Acts chapter 2 church and figure out what wine they were drinking. Now, they're not meaning we're supposed to be getting drunk. Some of you out there freaking out right now. It's not meaning that. It's what was that? What was the special sauce they had to make it work? Let's look back at Acts chapter 2. In Acts chapter 2, in Pentecostal churches is mentioned all the time as the ultimate model of what the church should be. And I'm not saying whether it is or isn't, I'm just giving you the feedback of what people have said to me. And generally where that leads to next in a conversation is home-based church versus corporate Sunday. And when I say corporate Sunday, I'm not meaning suits and ties and being all professional, but the idea of doing church as a smaller group of people in homes in that kind of environment versus, like, there has to be some distinction and it has to be a separate thing potentially versus what we've known as a Sunday service and the culture that's all built around it. I loved some of the final comments I'll just give to you in a second here that someone else kindly messaged me from Australia. It says this, I suspect the I suspect the churches may well have to become a bit more reflective and develop more depth. That was one of their ideas was that we need to kind of maybe we're being a little too shallow, maybe we're not going deep enough for people, and especially maybe in the needs that they have in their lives. They carry on to say, I think churches need to become creative and practical and maybe with a greater move into community health and social justice, holistic health, and other sectors. And if you ask people around the world what they think of the church, future of the church, this one comes up on a regular basis. The prevailing thing in our culture right now is to talk about social justice. I'm not saying whether it's a good or a bad thing. It's something that's part of our culture. And when it's part of our culture, rightly or wrongly, the church starts talking about it sometimes. Sometimes we are following the wind that's pushing everybody's sail along, and other times we're setting the tone. And I think maybe this is kind of a little segue, is that a lot of the time we're following what everyone else is doing. And maybe part of the challenge of the future church is to figure out what we need to do ahead of what's going on. Here's some great feedback. Hey, I'm going to put positive ones on there. Great thoughts you have there, Locky. I appreciate that, Ash. And he's got Church Without Walls. Great comment. That's actually one I'd forgotten about. Definitely came out of the late 90s and early 2000s. We sung songs in churches about breaking down the walls and getting outside the walls. I could talk about that for hours too. Man, it's bringing up so many things. If you've got any other comments, please throw them in the comment section. I really appreciate your feedback. I've been checking out, just as we're coming to land a little bit here, checking what other leaders and commentators have been saying about this recently. I've done things like what you'd expect. I've Googled the future of the church. I've looked up what are the most current teaching and things that have shared on YouTube from different commentators. Of course, there's lots, and I've had to weed my way, and I'm still going through a lot of conference material, some commentators, but I've really enjoyed doing it. I've loved what, actually I'll put this up, Chris has mentioned something flexible and adaptable. Great comment. I think that is really important for the future. Listen to what some other key people with way more clout, I guess, than me have to say. Craig Groschel, many of you might have heard of him. Well, I hope you have. He's the senior pastor of Life Church in America, arguably one of the largest churches in the Western world. And he said in a recent interview, and I was actually quite refreshed by it. He actually said this, and this is not to denigrate anything else that he's ever said, but just the humility of it. He said that he felt that he'd been more wrong than right with his predictions lately. And maybe that's actually a thing that's going on right now. There's so much uncertainty, so much that doesn't look clear in front of us, that maybe the reason why it's unclear is because maybe there is a change afoot. And it's important that as leaders, we try and figure out, is there a change? Is there something else going on here? Maybe God is up to something new, like we keep saying. But I love what he said. He said the new normal quickly switched back to normal. He saw that and other leaders around the world, people were talking about the new normal, like I mentioned, and everybody was so keen to get back. And maybe the reason, to be fair, why everyone wanted to get back to the so-called old normal was that's what we've invested in. We've invested in buildings, we've invested in structures, we've invested in people and processes. And so when the opportunity came to fit back into what might be a normal routine, we tended to head back to what we knew. And he picked up on it. But he said this, that he sees both in person, so Sunday service, whatever you want to put that, frame that around, and digital as 100% part of the future church. That was his feeling. And it's something, to be fair, Life Church has been doing for a period of time, but in his perspective, from his corner of the church and looking at it seriously, doing both and was the way to go. Mark Sayers, he's a pastor from Melbourne, Australia. The church is called Red Cross. Don't know if that has any significance. It's not the Red Cross as in the people who help you in war zones, but it's called the Red Cross Church. And he explained this. I thought it was interesting. He said the world's gone from complicated to complex. Like, the world has never been easy, has it? It's always been complicated to some way. But the way he was explaining it was complicated meant we could deal with challenges in a linear fashion. I'm not going to go too deep with this. We can adjust and create a process accordingly. No matter what was going on, how complicated it was, we'd figure out a way. But he's saying the world's got complex. It's different now. Just looking for a linear answer to the challenges we face isn't really working, or it's finding hard. It doesn't fit easily. It doesn't fit into the linear pattern that we want, which actually leads on to a quote that I saw today from Erwin McManus, who's a influential pastor out of LA in America. And he says this: out-of-the-box thinking could be the key to the church's future, especially in our now complex world, which I thought was a great kind of, it linked those two things together when I was hearing these interviews today. Out-of-the-box thinking could be the key to the church's future. Out of the box, have a think about that. What does that actually mean, out of the box? Out of the box means different. It means not framed in the way that we've been passed on to us, which I'm not saying is wrong. It's just if there's a new way, a new opportunity, somewhere that we could be more effective to do what the church has always wanted to do, been designed to do, then maybe we should be looking at it. I heard him recently say, many are mourning what they perceive they have lost. And it doesn't mean it was a good thing or a bad thing, but many, including a lot of pastors, are mourning what they sense they have lost. That many are trying to reclaim what they have lost as opposed to looking forward. He carries on to say that the flexibility for the church is more important now. That flexibility for the church is more important now, not the message or value. It's not the message or our values getting changed, but the delivery system, which I thought I resonated with that. I thought that was really cool. I heard recently a guy called Paul Maxwell. He's content lead for Tithely, which is, I won't get into why it's called that, but it's a church CMS, so like a church database and all that sort of system for churches. And he said this, that he predicts by 2025 that the current social media platforms will disappear and a move to a more personal and private style of communication will happen. And I thought that was interesting to throw into the mix as well about the future of the church, because right now I see us jumping on to every way of communicating we can. And it was right to do. I don't think that was wrong. But part of me inside of me is going, is this personal enough? Is doing a broadcast via Facebook stories, sitting there telling everybody about what your dog's doing as a pastor, there's nothing wrong with it. It makes you relatable. I don't have any issue with that. But when it comes to ministering to the deep need that's in the world right now, I'm not sure if that really gets to what people are wanting to do. And there's this part of me as well that's concerned that on the deeper issues of life, people don't want to put them on a social media platform, apart from the people who love to overshare. Another whole story, I could talk about that one. If you're just average Joe, you don't want to tell everybody about your issues, your struggles, your what you're freaking out about in your life, whether you're going to be able to pay the bills, all that sort of stuff, on a social media platform, because it's so filled with the worst of it, I guess, like the trolls or the people who look to take advantage of your vulnerability. And so he's predicting that some stage in the near future, he's saying 2025, that social media is going to change. And as a church, or the church, I would encourage us to look at all those options seriously. Finally, in regards to looking at examples to give you, and then I'm going to wrap this all up and see if you've got any comments. Actually, here's some comments now. Look, Ash again. Good on you, Ash. You'll get a medal here. Message stays the same, but perhaps the method's got to be different. Amen, bro. I think that's 100% correct. So I'm going to put a star beside that, so you get a star. There we go. I don't know if that shows on what you guys are looking at, but I've started here. Look at that. Carrie Newhoff. Now, I don't know everything about Carrie, but he does a lot of blogs and commentary and interviews with really influential church leaders. And he wrote something a little while ago called The 8 Disruptive Church Trends That Will Rule 2021. And actually, if you look back through his blog, he does this on a regular basis. Now, he hasn't put one up for 2022. I don't know whether he's working on it yet, but it's subtitled The Rise of the Post-Pandemic Church. Now, I think maybe one of the reasons why he hasn't, I'm just guessing, is because places like New Zealand, we're still really in the middle of the pandemic. We're not post-pandemic. And he was wanting to make some predictions. He made 8 of them. I don't want to give you all 8 because we're going to run out of time. Here's this first one. He says, the majority of attenders may no longer be in the room. Goes on to say, physical church attendance has been in decline for decades, and COVID in all likelihood accelerated the decline even further. It's important to mention here a lot of the research that's going on around the world right now of what COVID has done. It's beyond the health, as you could guess, the health of people. What COVID actually did in the pandemic, it accelerated a whole lot of things that were already happening in the world. It accelerated development of even the online things that we do through, not many people had heard of Zoom before COVID, right? Now, everyone, it's part of normal language. It accelerated a lot of things. And he's saying that it accelerated even the decline of churches. The average church has seen their reopened, so he's talking about in America, reopened attendance come in around 36% of previous levels, and almost no leader I've interviewed expects church attendance to jump back to pre-COVID levels for a while. Now, maybe for some of you out there who are pastors and you're sitting there looking at your numbers and thinking, man, when are we going to get back to what the numbers of people who were in attendance again? And maybe you're looking at yourself going, is this a reflection on me as a leader in my church, the value that we have in the community? Please, my friend, it's got nothing to do with that at all. COVID forced a lot of things to change, and the numbers are obviously reflecting that. Something else I've written down here, further stats, you can't kind of ignore. Church attendance has actually been, this is going to sound terrible, but the reality is this, church attendance in general has been declining on average every year for a long period of time. So sorry, everybody. I know it's not the most fun thing for me to say. And it's not saying that others haven't been growing. There's some very high profile churches around the world who look like they're going gangbusters. They're growing like crazy. But the reality is church attendance has actually changed. I've got a little graph here that I grabbed there. It cites where it's come from as well. And you can actually see the declining median worship attendance among US congregations. The pattern is very similar here in New Zealand from the anecdotal evidence that I've been able to get. That is the average number at 2020. And what they're showing now is post, with them starting to come back post-COVID, that's the way they're talking about it, the numbers are in the 40s to 50s. And that is normal. And now bearing in mind that most of those churches that we're talking about here have been designed to house on average 200 people. They have around 200 seats. That's the average of a reasonable sized church in America. It's not all the thousands, that's the average. And so you can imagine that with 45 in a 200 seat building, it feels a little bit more uncomfortable than 60 or 85. You can see that there's a bit of a trend going on here, and that's what. So maybe the model isn't quite working. And I know that's a challenging thing, and it's something that I've been mulling over for a period of time. What's the second one here that Carrie's put up? He goes, this growing churches will shift their focus from gathering to connecting. Maybe this is for all of us a key. This leads us to the second trend. Historically, the church has wagered almost everything on gathering people in a building. Isn't that ironic that right now we can't do that the same? This year, however, growing churches will focus less on gathering and much more on connecting. And he references a guy called Tony Morgan, connecting people who are engaging from home, both with the church and with one another, will become an essential skill for all church leaders. Now, have a think about that for a second. Maybe that's something you take away from tonight or from whenever you watch this and go, you know what? As churches and as leaders, do we need to develop some other skills? See, over the last, I suppose, 10, 20 years, I've seen pastors, so that's typically the term that gets used for someone leading a church, becoming not just a pastor, someone who cares for people, to more like a CEO. So they're actually having to organize business things, they're trying to organize buildings, they're having to do a lot more than they ever used to. The job descriptions got bigger and bigger. And so what's happening is now, if we're talking about a shift from gathering to connecting, does that mean that as pastors we need some different skills? Does that mean we need to bring some other people onto our teams that makes a bit of a difference? And I'm going to skip straight away to number 8 because of our time here. It says this: spiritual entrepreneurs will thrive. These are hard times for all leaders, but as the dust settles and we emerge in the post-pandemic world, we'll get there in New Zealand, guys, don't worry. Leaders will see opportunities instead of obstacles. The ones that do that, they will thrive. The missing gift set in the church, he says, is spiritual entrepreneurship, something the New Testament calls apostleship. Now, again, don't stone me. That's his interpretation of it. It's the kind of radical determination, innovation, and fierceness the Apostle Paul showed. And so he goes on to talk about that the church has been very focused on having shepherds. And I've been wondering about this, that maybe one of the reasons why we have some struggles, and I'm going to put my hand up about this, is maybe the church shouldn't just be led by pastors. Maybe the church... Oh, no one stone me on this one. We need some other options and other, suppose, our skills. And I've learnt that post-pastoring that maybe that was something we should have done a little bit more. Maybe we need some other skills to help us be as effective as we want to be. Hopefully this has been really cool. I'm going to wrap this up in a second. I don't know if you've got any other comments. Oh, look at that. Ash is totally agreeing. Amen. Dude, you're my favourite right now. It's all good. What do we got here? We've got a great big awesome comment. Great topic, Locky. I'm just reading this the same as you're reading it. I wonder whether it would be beneficial to get alongside some young unchurched people to understand their culture, understand their pain points. Whoop, going to stick it back up again, and contextualize the message and the vehicle delivery mechanism and stuff. Dude, great. This is one of these tricky things that I've found, to be honest, is that when you're involved with pastoring a church, unless you are intentional, the only group of people that you're around, the only culture you're exposed to is the prevailing one that you're in. You only have capacity for so much. I learnt that the hard way. First, if you've been with me, and how this all works. The reality is we need to be looking very cleverly and intentionally about what's going on in the world, which leads me, I want to wrap this up with 6 ideas, concepts. I know we're running out of time here to give you about you could consider. And I'm not telling you as a ex full-time pastor. I still have a credential to be one. They haven't removed that from me yet. But I want to give you 6 things that I've been considering, and they're just some summaries real fast, if we're wanting to discover what the future of the church should be. Number 1, focus on the outcomes before the processes. If you don't pick up on anything else from it, this is something that I've been really wrestling with for 18 months now. Focusing on the outcomes before the processes. For me, we spent so much time trying to improve our outcomes by changing our processes. We just wanted to tweak things. We thought, let's just twist this thing here, tweak that, turn this dial in our church this way and that way, and it will get better, without actually working out what the outcomes. We'd say these nebulous things like we just want better attendance, or we want it to feel good, or we want more engagement with the singing and the worship on a Sunday, but we haven't worked out what those outcomes would actually look like. For me, I think the challenge for the future of the church is actually be really intentional and go, what is the outcome we're looking for? Don't come up with a million things, just work out exactly what you're wanting to achieve, what the church is wanting to do. Where is its niche? Maybe it's different depending on where you are in a locale around the country or wherever you else might be watching this from the world. And then pick your process. What we've done is we've gone, here's our process we've inherited, which has been, to be blunt, fairly similar for 500 years, but with technology and trendiness added to it. We've been doing the same thing, and I'm concerned it's not working the way we want. Number 2, look for new opportunities. Look for them. Go looking for the opportunities right now. I'm reading studies that are coming out from all around the world talking about the new opportunities. I'm not talking about the church. I'm talking about what everyone else is talking about, where I know it's been a hobby subject for me on mental health. In that I've got to get the stats right. I've been watching and learning some stuff from some other experts who are involved in the United States pandemic planning. And they're talking about, there's a huge number. There's something like 33% increase in the number of young adults presenting with self-harm to emergency facilities in the States, directly coming from COVID-19 lockdowns. There is a whole group of people that are really hurting out there. And many times we're looking for, someone mentioned about the pain points. The pain points from many of our young people is they lack hope. So maybe the future of the church is actually not just looking for where it sucks for people and being all silly about it, but you need to minister to the people in their need, and the church should have some answers for people. So we should be looking at where we can respond. Number 3, major on community relationship. You've seen that in some of the other points. It should be a focus for us. Number 4, prepare for the future proactively and creatively. Don't go back to normal. Normal is, to be blunt, not working for a whole lot of people. It's not working for people always in their churches. It's not working for leaders. I've had lots of leaders talk to me privately saying, I'm really struggling with how we do church. I'm going, don't throw it out. Just proactively look for a new way of doing things. Be creative with it and lead people well through that time as you adjust. Don't just throw it all out and start all over again. Lead people through that. Number 5, be more responsive, nimble, fast. I think we're so often, like I mentioned earlier, waiting for the wind to blow us in the direction that we think the church should go, when the church should be, I think, a little bit on the front foot. If you're hearing from God, that's a phrase that churches love to talk about. If you're hearing from God, ask Him where you can be more responsive, nimble, and fast. And my final one here tonight is this. You've got a team. I spent so much time trying to engage a few people to do most of the tasks. And I don't have all the answers on right now, but I look at what's going on in church, the churches I've been involved in, and I had people, excuse my French here, with bums on seats for years and years and years, who are telling me they've got this issue to get over before they do something. Or I'm just looking at this going like, how many sermons does one person need to hear before they become part of the team? And I think one of the future shifts for the church is not that we're looking for more pastors and better preachers. I think we need to look for ways of engaging people and contextualizing their faith so they don't go, I need to be fed. The next person, I'm hobby horse of mine, the next person who says to me after being in a church for 30 years that they're not getting fed, I can say this because I'm not pastoring right now, you know what, go away. Go and have a hard look at yourself. Figure out what on earth has gone wrong, because God did not save you to sit your bottom on a seat for 30 years waiting to be fed. He's asking you to do something with what you've been fed. And I think the only way that a lot of us are going to grow up is doing something with what you've already got. You never feel, to be blunt, like I'm an ex-church pastor, you never feel like you're qualified, ever. In fact, in scripture, there's that story where God says to a guy, I can't do it. And he says, go, what's in your hand? Many of you have probably heard messages like this, even preached it. What's in your hand? Go with what you've got right now. Stop waiting for something else. When you're waiting, you're not responsive. You're not nimble. You're not quick. I'm sorry, I'm preaching. And someone said, oh, look at that. Chris has said, preach it, Locky. Oh man, some habits die hard, don't they? It's all okay. I think I've said enough. I think that's enough. I'm going to wrap this up because I could go on about this for hours, but I want you to be able to digest some of it. I really hope and pray this has been helpful. I'm not finished with this topic. We're going to interview some people shortly to bring some different angles. I'm really hoping it's going to be helpful for you. Have a look through this. We're going to post some notes on this a little bit later for you. So I know this is all live on Facebook right now, but the YouTube version will have highlights and bits and pieces if you think it'd be helpful for a team or somebody. Be really good. And I'm looking forward to when this study that I've done is finished and we're about to publish. I'm going to share that with you guys as well. We'll probably make a video around it as well. So hopefully that will be helpful. Hey, so God bless you guys. Hope this has made a measure of difference for you no matter where you are. I know it's different, but we're going to do different this year because that's how we're going to be. Look after yourselves. Make sure you throw some comments in there if you can. And I'll look forward to seeing you real soon.